Good morning, scholars. Welcome to day 2 of Comic Book Club. Let's go ahead and share day 2. Day 2 is going to cover the history of comics. If you did not do day 1's work, feel free to go back. It's all going to be located on the Google site for Comic Book Club. So we're going to cover the history of comics. There might be some additional articles you're more than welcome to read. They'll be located on the Google site, which I will talk about at the end of this. Let's go ahead and get started with this first video.
They are the handheld, take-anywhere books filled with superheroes, classic stories, or adult dramas. Some of them originally sold for only 10 cents, but now go for millions. With stunning artwork and legendary storytelling, their pages have captivated readers for over 80 years. This is the history of comic books. Using images to communicate goes back to the 32nd century BC, when Egyptians devised hieroglyphs with over 1,000 images representing ideas. In the same way, tapestries told stories through scenes depicted on the lush textiles in medieval European times. Mass production of paper allowed for the next medium of sequential art to emerge. While printed forms of picture-based stories appeared in Europe prior, the first American example of a comic strip came in the form of The Yellow Kid. The kid's creator, Richard Outcault, infused the comic with political and social commentary. Due to the popularity of The Yellow Kid, other comic strips soon appeared. In 1933, Famous Funnies collected some of the serialized newspaper strips into a book format. Although this collection included reprintings, many historians have deemed this publication as the first comic book. In 1938, the golden age of comic books began with Action Comics #1. This first appearance of Superman ushered in the cape and cowl popularity of the superhero. The golden age would give birth to many of today's beloved heroes, including Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Captain America, and Captain Marvel. Many of the heroes grew so popular that they became symbolic elements in the war effort in World War II, and comic covers often depicted heroes beating up Hitler. Not all comics featured heroes, though. Many of the horror comics, such as EC's Vault of Horror, drew in readers who wanted their comics more dark and macabre. The taboo-breaking storylines and shocking artwork garnered too much attention. Psychiatrist Frederick Wertham filed a study called Seduction of the Innocent, where he claimed comic books to be a source corrupting the youthful readers. A Senate subcommittee investigated, and the comic industry self-imposed a set of codes and laws to keep comics upbeat and morally positive. In 1956, Showcase #4 introduced the world to a new version of a DC comic favorite, The Flash. Thus, the Silver Age of comics began. During this time, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby at Marvel Comics would create some of the most beloved heroes, including Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the Incredible Hulk. By the 1970s, the counterculture popularity no longer wanted clean-cut heroes. An underground movement of comics rose, and artists like R. Crumb published adult-themed comics in small presses. Since the use of the Comics Code was optional, the underground movement needed no permission, and they had no limitations on their subject matters. By the 1980s, the modern era of comics saw the big two publishers going head-to-head, Marvel and DC. While they battled for top billing, their characters appeared on television prime time in Saturday morning cartoons. In smaller presses like Pacific, Eclipse, and Fantagraphics slowly entered into the market. The graphic novel also rose in popularity during the 80s. These longer works sometimes reprinted comic story arcs, but many featured original, unseen material. This longer form allowed for more in-depth storytelling and the dramatic content often won literary awards. When the 1990s hit, the comic book artists grew in celebrity status. Their popularity allowed them something hardly seen in the industry: a split from the big two publishers. Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, and Jim Valentino formed their own company, Image, and rocked the comic book world. Events like the death of Superman brought comics into the public eye like never before. With the comic codes an outdated form of censorship, publishers abandoned its use. As digital readers became more prevalent, the comic book took new shape in digital form. With comic book characters so identifiable, so many of the comic books we read are made into film. Popular shows like The Walking Dead also use comic books as their source material. And so there's no question that the comic book industry entered a new high point in its history. So the next time you grab your favorite issue or graphic novel, appreciate how far comic books have come since the concept of sequential art began back in ancient Egypt. If you enjoyed this video, then you may enjoy some of our other
So that was just a brief synopsis of the entire history of comics. I really like it because it does such a good job connecting where it came from, some of the original ideas of art in hieroglyphics. You might even go further than that and talk about murals that people that lived in caves in prehistory would create, and those being also representations of stories, all the way to now in digital comics, which now you have access to. If you're interested in learning more about the history of comics, I'm going to link to the Google site a 24-page article that you do not have to read, but it's just an interesting look at how comics developed. And I think it's really interesting, and I'll link it in the website. So the first age of comics is called the Golden Age. It's considered the Golden Age because it's the first recorded one. It's when Superman is introduced. It's somewhere the major heroes are. It's looked back upon as kind of like, you know, one of those great times for comics because it's the first age. If you're interested, I'm going to link the video for the Golden Age of comics. I'll link the PowerPoint that I'm looking at. You can just click on the little picture and it'll take you to a YouTube video about the Golden Age. They're a little bit longer, so I'm not going to go through them here, but if you are interested, just like with the previous article, you can look at it. After the Golden Age came the Silver Age. The Silver Age is best defined as the age of basically right into and then after World War II. Comics become a little bit more intense. They become a little bit more violent in some ways. You see the entry of a lot of Marvel's superheroes. Marvel comes into the forefront. And so Silver Age is really represented by those people in that time. After the Silver Age, you have the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age is considered when comic books started to come into a little bit of a decline, but you start seeing different superheroes kind of taking the lead. So the X-Men, you see the introduction of Spider-Man. They become even more dark than the previous comic books. For instance, you see like the death of Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man. You see a lot of new storylines being explored. A lot of things that were happening in society are starting to be depicted in comic books. So if you're interested in learning specifically about the history of Detective Comics, also known as DC, there's a video for you right here. I believe it's a little bit longer, so I might just suggest that you watch it on your own. Let me double check.
Hello, everyone.
All right, let me just wait till 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it's about 13 minutes long, so I'm not going to play the whole thing here. But the Marvel one is a little bit, there's 2 Marvel ones, and one of the Marvel ones is shorter. So I'll go ahead and play that one for you here. I thought it was really cool how they did it. Basically what they did was they did a montage, like a collection visual images. And so they start with some of the earliest Marvel comics, and they depict the cover art, and then they move through history to the most recent Marvel comics and their cover art, which I thought is just awesome. So it's a lot quicker, and because it's quicker, and I want to make sure that you have the option to look at the other ones, I'm just going to play this one. Okay. So the history of Marvel Comics as depicted in images. Okay. So I thought that was an excellent representation of the evolution of Marvel Comics. If you're interested in more of a documentary style video on Marvel Comics, I have linked a video that goes through their evolution as when they first started off as Timely Comics, and then how they then morphed into Marvel Comics. So both videos are going to be in the PowerPoint, which I will provide for DC and for Marvel. But like I said before, Comic Book Club is not just about learning about comic books. It's about also providing you all the opportunity to read and create your own. So just like what we talked about last time, you will have an output, which will get you some breakthrough points as long as you email it to breakthroughelectives@gmail.com. So here are the three options you can choose from for something you can do. The first option is to answer the following question. The following question is, what is the history of comics? You can talk about the evolution of comics in general from ancient Egypt all the way to now. You could talk about, you could watch the video on DC or Marvel history and talk about what you saw. You can also even look at how images changed, right? You can see that like artwork got far more detailed than it was originally. And you can talk about just kind of visually what you're seeing as an artist, or you can talk about how the stories have changed. Make sure that whatever you do when answering that question, you do it in a Google Doc. You just make a new Google Doc, and then you would write 2 paragraphs, and then you would send it to breakthroughelectives@gmail.com. That's option 1. If you don't want to do option 1, option 2, just like the last time, is to read a comic from the list of free comics that I showed you last class and just write a 2-paragraph summary and review. Like, what was the comic about? What did you like about it? What would you have changed? In case you forgot how to get to that, let's go ahead and go back to my website. So you would go to Comic Book Club, and I'll show you how to get there quickly at the end of this. In terms of this, you see the free comics online resource right here. And here's a list of all the different places you can get some free comics to read. Just click on one of those. Go to comics. And then just choose from the lists. There's plenty of them to go around. Anything that strikes your fancy, read it, and then just write a review of it. That's all. Okay. And then let's go to option 3. So I'm going to scroll back. Option 3 is to create your own comic book drawing using videos on how to like draw tutorials. You can find those tutorials. I posted those tutorials on the website, and you can either do it old school with an actual like sketch pad and your own art supplies, or if you want to do it with one of the websites that I showed you that show how to draw online, you can do that. Storyboard is one that a lot of my students in the past have used. But whatever you decide to do, make sure to take a picture of your drawing or save your drawing and then send it to Breakthrough Electives with the class date. So you would say like, this drawing is for class 2. So that way we can differentiate if you do drawings in each of the different classes. Okay. So how do you get to my website? If you want, in your address bar, you would just put www.tinyurl.com/Breakthrough Denver, so BKD Comic Book Club. If you do that, which I will show you how to do that, so tinyurl.com/BKD Comic Book Club, and it takes you to the webpage for Comic Book Club for me. It'll look like this. You'll see that lesson 1 is here. If you ever want to rewatch it, it's available for you. Lesson 2 will be posted just shortly as soon as I finish recording it. And at the bottom are just some resources. For instance, the free comic handout, which gives you where you can get some free comics, a video on how to draw comic book characters done by an actual comic book artist, the history of Marvel, and the history of DC. If you want to go through those videos that I showed you in the PowerPoint, what I'll do is I will, at the bottom of this, provide a hyperlink to the PowerPoint, so that way you can go ahead and use that. But that is about it. Join me next time as we do day 3, which will be the future of comics and slowing down on some of those tutorial videos on how to draw comics the best way you can. So I hope you enjoyed that. Go ahead and keep on reading, keep on drawing, comic book lovers. See you next time.